let's get into our webinar now on emotional intelligence, the secret to success. This is such a fascinating topic, and we have so many ideas of what it is. You know, one of the biggest things we're going to take away from this is at the end of this, really how to manage stress, but also how to build your awareness for what I like to call spotlight moments. These moments where you're under duress, your emotions are heightened, and how do you manage these moments so that you sort of break that cycle of maybe where things were going round and round, and you start to break the cycle and to get more collaboration, better communication, and feel better about the interactions that you had, but also the other person also feels recognized with that as well. This webinar that we're sharing is, I'll say in French, is a soupçon, is just a slice of what we do in our emotional intelligence course, the path to your professional success. So if you're interested in more about emotional intelligence, then do sign up for our course where we can go more in depth. I just want to let you know that as we go through this webinar, do have a pen and paper handy to take notes, but also we've got some questions to ask you so you can take notes around that. Also, we're going to be looking at some scenarios and bring that to life. So here's what we're going to cover in this webinar. We're going to understand emotional intelligence. What is it? And then how can you apply that? What are the techniques that you can use to apply this? And when I say understand the different emotions, it's understanding means that we're going to be cognitive. We're going to intellectualize. We're going to use our brain part of that to understand our emotions and how to manage them. Like I said, that spotlight moment that happens. And then at the end of this is to become more confident in your ability to manage conflict and stress, but also the ripple effect that has on the other person when you're able to do that. So if everyone's ready, here is our first quiz that we're going to ask. How would you define emotional intelligence? So get ready to type in the chat, A, B, or C. How would you define emotional intelligence? A, is it intelligent emotions? B, is it the ability to identify and manage one's own emotions, as well as the emotions of others? Or C, is it the total score derived from a set of standardized tests or subtests designed to assess human intelligence? So let's see what we got in the chat. We're getting a lot of B's. Denise, Amy, Donna, B, Lindsay, Denise again, Karen, Louise, B, Chantal, B, Cindy, B. All right, we got a lot of B. So it seems like everybody can agree that indeed it is the ability to identify and manage one's own emotions as well as to manage emotions of the others. And that is exactly what emotional intelligence is. It's to accurately identify the emotions in ourselves and others, to be able to understand them, and then to be able to manage those emotions, and then to be able to use what we've got, what we understand, what you've sort of taken from this data, if you want, this emotional data, and then to be able to communicate effectively what you want, what you need, but to also understand there's another person involved in here. What I like to say about emotional intelligence is that somebody has to be the adult in this relationship. So congratulations to all of you for joining us in this webinar, because after this webinar, you are now going to become the adult in your relationships as you go forward. And when I say the adult in the relationship, it means that the one that has that more heightened emotional intelligence is the one who actually has more control over the conversation and has more control to be able to lower the temperature of the conversation that is happening, and to be able to get that communication and collaboration going. So one of the key things that you'll come out of this webinar, but also when you take the course, is to build that awareness for that moment where it's like, I'm in a moment where I need to be using this emotional intelligence, which is to identify the emotion in myself, but also what's going on in the other person. And now I need to be able to manage that for us to be able to move forward. And you know, we talk about EQ or IQ. So first off, for shorthand, I might just call this EQ instead of saying always emotional intelligence, or emotional quotient, if you want. And again, it's that ability to be aware of and manage emotions in the relationships. Why is it so pivotal in our personal and professional success? Well, you know, if you've gone for any recent job interview, so many companies now are looking for not just that the person has the skills, the technical skills to do the job, because that could be learned. What can't be always learned is, how is this person going to work with other people? How is this person going to deal with stress? How are they going to lead others? And those are the things that can grow. But those are the things that we need to be able to be fully aware of to help us be more successful. If you could think of that great coworker that you had, or someone you admired, or a great manager you once had, they probably were very high on that emotional intelligence, that they were able sometimes to park their feelings at that moment to be able to focus on what was important to you, so that we can get to dialogue and then their feelings can come up. So IQ is interesting because IQ is, you can grow slightly your IQ, but not really very much. It can't really have much of a pivot, but your EQ can grow exponentially. It's sort of what they call this sort of neuroplasticity, is that you could build these muscles, and it starts with, again, with awareness. So how we know this is that, what they use a lot in companies now is your EQ is a strong predictor of your performance. 90% of top performers have scored high in emotional intelligence. And when I say 90% of top performers, I'm not saying top salespeople. I mean people who've been tested in a sense of resilience, adaptability, ability to be cross-functional, to be collaborative, and how they dealt with stress, and being more mindful, as example, in their time management and creativity. And so that's the measurement of the 91% of top performers. Now I'm going to give you a huge statistic here, and that is a UC Berkeley study found that emotional intelligence was 400% more powerful than IQ in predicting who would have success in their field. Now, that seems like a huge number, but what I do agree with that is that you could think of, if anyone's going to have success, is the person, as they say, who has that more of a growth mindset, someone who is curious and ability to be curious about others and curious about themselves as well, that they're also invested in themselves to grow. So if we look at these two people, person one or person two, who would you want to work with? So put in the chat, who would you rather work with, looking at just the body language of these people, person one or person two? So Denise says two, Chantal says two, Leslie two, Tracy two, Cindy two, Donna two, Nadine two, C. Roberts two. Yeah, I think so too. Lindsay two, Sarah two. We got a lot of two. So interestingly enough, nobody wants to work with the one that's the number one person. And right off the bat, we get to see this is emotional intelligence at work. It's as simple as this sometimes, is your body language. This person is smiling, the face is open, the shoulders are not hunched up, the hands are open. Even though this person is pointing, the hands are still open, the body language is open. And so that's a great example already of the effect of emotional intelligence. Now, I can relate to person one. Not only have I dealt with person one, I myself have been person one numerous times. And sometimes that's the thing, is that we're not even though I'm teaching emotional intelligence, sometimes we don't even realize that we're giving off this kind of signal to someone else, that our face is in sort of a deep scrunched up, and maybe we're thinking deeply. And so often, sometimes I'll have to say, I'm making this face because I'm just deep in thought right now. And I'll verbalize it so that people don't think I'm looking angry. But I know I've had this posture before. For example, I've worked with a colleague for many, many years in learning, and we would have huge disagreements. And I know that I would make this type of body language, which doesn't help those type of disagreements, where I'm allowing my emotions to take over. So we'll talk more about that as we go through this. So as I said before, if you have a pen and paper, so we've got a little quiz, and feel free to also put in the chat as we go through this emotional intelligence quiz. So this is no way judging where you're at. There's no assessment. There's no evaluation. This is just to get our thoughts going about what is emotional intelligence, and maybe some situations that you could maybe apply this emotional intelligence. So number one, our first question is this. So our question is, I do not become defensive when criticized. So A, I do not. So I do not become defensive when criticized. I do sometimes. Well, it depends on, what's going on. Unfortunately, I do become defensive when criticized. And D, who are they to criticize? So you could put in the chat if you want to share. If not, just keep it to yourself and keep track of what your answers were, A, B, or C. And we got some people sharing for that. So we got a lot. Again, B seems to be popular. It's that for sure. I do sometimes. Thank you, Chantal, for sharing that. It depends on the situation. I think we can all relate to that. Next question. I can stay calm under pressure. A, yes. B, again, I do sometimes. It depends on. C, unfortunately, I don't. Again, no judgment, no assessment. Victoria stays calm under pressure. Caroline stays calm under pressure. So we got a mixture of some B's and some A's here. That's great. Next question. I am positive. A, yes. B, I am sometimes, depends on. C, I think I am. D, and then this happened. And then this happened. Oh, and then you know what else they said? So are you positive? So again, we've got a lot. Oh, we got a lot of A's on this. Watson, Annie B, Flora, A. Thank you so much. Business planning is a C. I think I am. Yeah, and that's the thing. I like that. I like that honesty. Is that sometimes we want to believe we're positive. I appreciate that. Two more questions. I maintain a sense of humor. Yes. B, LOL. C, I try. D, that wasn't funny. And you might be wondering, why is a sense of humor so important? And that is exactly, it's sometimes the hardest thing to do is to make that switch in the emotions, and to maybe see the humor in the situation, or to be able to use humor sometimes to be able to, deflate a certain situation. But it's taking things seriously, but not taking yourself seriously. And that's the difference. It's taking the event seriously, but not taking yourself seriously. And then the mistake we get with emotional intelligence is that if we take ourselves too seriously, it has, again, that ripple effect. Roll with it says business planning, and Sean is yes, tries to maintain a sense of humor. That's great. Thank you. Our final question. I try to see things from another's perspective. So I try to see it from their, put myself in their shoes, as so to speak, which is always. B, sometimes. C, I try. I need to be heard first. Let's see what we got here. So always, we got a mixture of always, sometimes between Louise and Linda. Denise, I try for sure. And that's and that's freely. Let's do one more question here. I can freely admit to making a mistake. Always. Sometimes I try. It's not me, it's them. So I can freely admit to making a mistake. And this is huge. So Louise and Tammy, that's great that you're able to freely make a mistake. Sonia, sometimes, for sure. Absolutely. Again, no judgment, no assessment at all as we go through this. So thank you so much for going through the quiz. Some great answers there. And here's the characteristics of what we just went through in that. So first off, if a lot of you answered A, then congratulations. That's, you're well on your way to having strong emotional intelligence. Same thing if you answer a lot of B's, it means you're at least you're aware of these moments, and we're not perfect. We're not robots. So you're aware of these moments, and you're trying to put humor and try to be positive and try to look at the other person's perspective in that. And C and D, even if you answer C and D, again, it's the same thing. At least you have the awareness of these moments, and now maybe you're a bit more aware. So the characteristics, as we say, is this spotlight moment. And spotlight moment could be, for example, you're going to go have a meeting, and before you go into that meeting, certain people are going to be in that meeting, and they might, take over that meeting. And so you start already sort of writing the script going into that meeting. And so that could become your spotlight moment, because you're going to have to say something. Or you're going to go, this is, one of the reasons we're so nervous about public speaking is that we're in that spotlight moment. Our stress level is high. And all these moments is that because we're so focused on ourselves. And so the idea of emotional intelligence is to switch that thinking and stop thinking about yourself, and to be able to just go, okay, for example, a presentation or public speaking, if you're going to go in to do that, instead of thinking about, oh, I hope I don't fail, I hope I don't mess up. The positive thinking, as an example, would be, what I'm coming here because I'm going to bring a value. I want to share some insight. I want to share some knowledge. I want to create an experience. And it becomes now focused on them instead of being focused on yourself. So that's an example of how to put positive thinking into play. The other one, of course, is resilience and change. So, one of the things about this is why I put resilience and change together, is because change is our biggest test of resilience. As we go through changes, we have that anxiety moment of where we're sort of in past state to present state to future state. And it's those transition moments as we go through the change. And you can think about at your company, maybe like a new technology has come in, and you could just see those that have that high emotional intelligence are able to go, okay, it's not going to be perfect, but I'm going to deal with it. I'm going to learn from it. I'm going to see how I can adapt to it. And that's resilience, which is, what can I learn from this? How can I adapt? And how can I find a new level of comfort? Even thinking something personal about like moving, and you're moving from one location to another location personally. And thinking about, will the grocery store be there? What are the schools like? What's the traffic sounds like? And the resilience is when we start to going, okay, I could let all that anxiety eat me up, so to speak, and start thinking about all that. Or I can go, whatever's going to happen, I'm going to find a way to adapt, and I'm going to find a new comfort level with that. And that is what resilience is knowing that there's going to be a period of change and how we deal with that. And again, we go into deeper in change. We even have a course on change management, which is called From Resistance to Resilience, which we really go into practice with all that. A sense of purpose, again, why am I doing this? What is the point of this? So a sense of purpose is also really important, that there's a belief in that. And that connection, it's really important to get along with people. That is also very important. And one more thing about we go here to perseverance, persistence and perseverance, optimism, self-awareness, sense of perspective. So I want to say on persistence, perseverance, Einstein said about perseverance, it's not that I'm so smart, it's just that I stay with problems longer. And that's what perseverance is, which is, a lot of you said you admit to making mistakes, as an example. And that's perseverance, which is, it's an opportunity to grow when you admit to making a mistake. It's an opportunity to learn from that versus staying married to that idea that about the mistake. That sense of optimism, again, the glass is half full, the glass is half empty. The one, obviously optimism is thinking that change is around the corner, but in a positive way, that some positive things will happen. Not that it's going to be perfect, but that positive things will happen. Self-awareness is probably one of the biggest characteristics of emotional intelligence, because it is, as you all did through that quiz, is taking a second to just go, what's happening here in this spotlight moment? And where is there an opportunity maybe for me to do things just a little bit differently, to communicate this in a different way, to not to react, but to respond. React is where I let my emotions jump in and I give a quick answer. And that respond is where I go 1, 2. And in that 1, 2, I'm like, how do I want to treat this differently? How do I want to say things differently? What can I do here that is not going to raise everyone's temperatures? And that ties us into a sense of perspective. And a lot of you said that you can see it from the other person's perspective. So often we have counter ideas because we're not seeing, we're standing by our facts and our logic. Don't you see that this makes sense? And not realizing that perhaps the other person is having an emotional reaction to that. And logic is not going to help move the conversation or the ideas. Or that they might have a different opinion, a different value, a different belief, and maybe understanding what's important to them so that we could find that common dialogue. So let's go into our 4 elements here of emotional intelligence, and we'll get into some scenarios as we go through this. So it basically breaks down to what I see, what I do. So it starts off with always with ourselves in emotional intelligence, what I see, what I do. And then it's what I see within myself and what I see in the other person. what I do within myself and what I do with the other person. And so if we look at that first box, what I see is the self-awareness and myself. And so self-awareness is that exactly that, your ability to accurately perceive your emotions in that moment. And I always want to call it that spotlight moment, and understand your tendencies across the situations. So what is going on for me? Why am I being triggered? Or what can I do differently here? Why is this affecting me so much? Then the next step we go is to what I do. So now that we know our emotions are being affected, and we're being self-aware, now here's the pivotal point. What do I do? Because it's ability to use that awareness that you just figured out to stay flexible and positively direct your behavior. This is, if you're in Canada and you watch the sports network, what they always call is the TSN turning point, where the game was won or lost. And it's that self-management moment, because how you react next has a huge effect on the relationship, on the conversation, on what's going to happen next. And we're going to give you some tools and techniques with all of these, by the way, as we go through the webinar. And then our third step here is our social awareness. What do I see in the other person? So it's your ability to pick up on the other emotions and what's going on. Like we said, it's that other perspective. What is going on in their world? I'll borrow from my good friend Carol Lempert, who always would say, what do you see? What do you hear? What do you see? What do you hear? And again, it's to pause your emotions and to just sort of look at the other person, go, what do you see? What do you hear? And all this is happening like milliseconds. And it's turning this from the subconscious to start to become more conscious of these moments, to the point where it becomes subconscious again. So it takes practice to do this, and it's going to feel very awkward to just have those pauses as someone is speaking and have that moment of silence to just go, what did they say? Why is this bothering me so much? How can I manage myself? And what did they mean by what they said? What's underneath that? What's maybe not being said? What's important to them? What do they care about? And that leads us up to the relationship management. It's to put all of these skills together, how I'm feeling, how I manage it, what the other person is feeling, and to be able to manage that interaction successfully. So let's give you some skills. Let's start off with the self-awareness and give you some of the ideas. Number one with self-awareness, it's really simple. It's too fast. Quit treating your feelings as good or bad. That starts with that, with self-awareness. So it's too general to just go, I'm feeling good, I'm feeling bad. And when we're able to, and this is a crazy, crazy slide with so much going on here. Here's the takeaway from this slide. It's to realize the intensity of your feelings. So if you're feeling bad, for example, if you're feeling angry, you're going into that conversation, you're feeling angry. Are you at a 10? Are you like furious? Look under angry at a 10. Are you furious? Or is it more you are lower? Are you like, if you look at between 1 and 5, are you resistant? Are you irritated, annoyed? And the reason that's so important is when we, because we overestimate our emotions. So because we overestimate our emotions and we say, I'm feeling bad, we give us, it's like we're at a 10, but maybe you're not at a 10. Maybe you're actually at a 3 or 4. And the same thing, I'm going to go over all the other side to happiness. So we say good. Well, we don't often allow ourselves to be happy. And that's often because we think happy means that we have to be exuberant, ecstatic, passionate, elated. And that, let's face it, that doesn't happen all the time. But if you could think about, hey, maybe I'm content, or this is a pleasant moment. And that allows us to appreciate the more positive things that happen in our lives, to be and to not always be going towards the sort of the negative side. So the takeaway from this is you don't have to have this whole vocabulary, but even if you just give it a number, I'm at a 1, I'm at a 3. But how this also relates to the other person is we often overestimate the emotions of the other person. So was that person, terrified? Were they at a 10? Or were they nervous, worried, anxious towards the lower part of that. Same thing. If we're going to that difficult conversation, are they outraged or are they disgusted, agitated, a bit more in the middle? And so the idea of this is how can we lower our own temperature, but also be able to aware of lower that person's number as well. And it doesn't mean that we have to get them over to happy or you have to get yourself over to the happy side, because that's the biggest mistake we make is try to fix it quickly. It's not a quick fix. It's about just lowering the temperature, building your awareness. So let's put our awareness to the test right here. You got Chris on your team. Chris is very volatile, not at all a team player. Everyone gets along great on the team except Chris. Chris always tries to point out everyone's faults, but not their own. Colleagues say it is very difficult to talk to Chris. I think you probably all know Chris. So right off the bat, as you look back at that, you could already probably feel your shoulders coming up, your face kind of tightening, thinking about you have to deal with Chris as you think about that. So how we put our self-awareness is recognizing that that's what's happening. And we want to be able to observe the ripple effect from the emotions. Thinking back to our characters that we saw, our two pictures, the character one, we could see that this is what happens is when we're thinking about having that meeting with Chris or that discussion with Chris, or we're going into a meeting with Chris, we start to make this face. And as soon as we see Chris, we start to make that face. So observe the ripple effect from your emotions. Lean into the discomfort. Okay, I know that this is going to be, uncomfortable. I'm going to lean to it because we're going to give you some other skills on how to change that. And then know who you are and what pushes your button. So why does this affect you so much and what pushes your buttons? That's a great, Chris, thank you so much. Must be the other Chris. Absolutely. Love that comment. Thank you. A little bit more about self-awareness is also visiting your values. So one of the reasons why you might feel triggered is your values are opposite of the other person. So values could be like generosity, responsibility, and responsibility could be you're a hard worker and the other person maybe doesn't seem like they take that so seriously, that doesn't seem so important to them. Humor could be very important. For me, humor is very important. If I find someone who doesn't have humor, is always taking everything so seriously and taking themselves so seriously, I find it difficult to find that middle ground. So humor for me is a very important value. Appreciation. When someone is always, again, that glass is always half empty all the time. They have no appreciation. Or determination. You may have strong determination, and the other person might be, no, I'm good, I'm fine. Integrity. That they're going to do what they say. They say they're going to call you. They say they're going to send you that email, and they don't. But you always do. So integrity is also really important. So to recognize, oh, that's what's going on for me. So the other thing is to check yourself. And check yourself means, in this day and age of social media, think if you're being recorded almost. That if you're in that discussion with someone, and I think back to that discussion I had with my colleague, and we're having that debate, and I'm making this face, that if it was to be recorded, that's what it would show. It would show my shoulders up, my face all sort of scrunched up, and to my tone of voice a little bit higher, maybe a little bit louder. And so think about that. Think about if there was almost like a camera watching you at that time, what would it see? So that you can make a quick fix in that moment. And then seek feedback. The only reason I know I was making that face was because I was told, hey, I don't know if you're aware, but when you're in the discussion with your colleague there, you really looked upset. And I was like, oh, I wasn't upset. I thought we were having a healthy discussion. And that's also the misinterpretation of our self-awareness. I thought we were having a healthy discussion, and it was coming across as I was upset. So there we go. So again, it's looking at that range as we go through that. So as you look at that and think about some of the emotions you might feel. For example, I think your recommendation is fantastic. Thank you for all your hard work. So if you look back on this one here, and we look under the happy, what might be your emotion there? Thank you for your recommendation and all your hard work. how might you feel? Gratified, looking into the happy here, glad. You might not feel elated, but it's also to recognize that. And again, I've been doing this for 30 years. What are your qualifications? Then thinking back to those emotions, even giving it a number. What are you feeling when someone just accuses you? I've been doing this for 30 years. What are your qualifications? How are you feeling? Probably in that afraid category, but are you really terrified? And if you know you're not terrified and you know that you're at a 5, it's like, okay, this is manageable. I'm not paralyzed by this. This is manageable. Your analysis is not good. How long have you been working on this? And the same thing, give it a number so that you're able to now manage that moment as you're going through that. And last one, this one triggers my buttons all the time. You obviously didn't understand. They're very calm as they say it, and it just sort of triggers something in you. So again, looking at those numbers. The other thing that happens is maybe our needs of what we need. And so if we look at, we always think, again, the other person is the other person's fault, but it's also what our needs are and the needs of the other person. So when our needs are met, we feel happy, satisfied, proud. And when our needs are not met, we feel angry, sad, frustrated. Now, our basic human needs are obviously shelter, food, water, companionship. Those are our basic needs. But from a professional standpoint, we have to expand our vocabulary and look, what might be important to myself? For example, protection. When someone says, I've been doing this for 30 years, what are your qualifications? Maybe my need for stability or security is being threatened, or my need for recognition, affection, recognition, respect. Or maybe the fact, again, it's my want of understanding for knowledge or learning or participation. So understanding what our needs are very important, not just to understand ourselves, but it's also to be able to express and go, okay, this is why it's bothering me, because I feel like I'm not being recognized here. And this is why it's bothering me so much. When someone says, I've been doing this for 30 years, what are your qualifications? And it gives you more ability to think about, now that I understand it's recognition that's bothering me so much, I'm able to express now what is important to me and let the other person know why this is affecting me and how we can move forward on that. But also, when that person is saying, what are your qualifications? I've been doing this for 30 years. What's their need? Is their need maybe that they feel threatened? So maybe their idea of protection, financial stability is being questioned. So it's also to be able to recognize theirs. Or is it creation? Or is it their identity? They've been doing this for a long time. Or their freedom. They want independence, autonomy, choice. They don't want someone telling them what to do. So when we look at that, that's what's really important. Let's go now into our self-management. What do we do when we deal with those situations? And now our self-management is, basics: breathe, count to, sleep on it. These are the basics. That's that turning point moment. Just take a breath and slow it down. Even if you count to 1, 2, you don't have to count to 10. Even if you count to 1, 2, to decide if I'm going to react or I'm going to respond. And the beauty when you get an email that really bothers you is you could sleep on it. You don't have to answer that email right away when you're really bothered by it. The other thing is set aside time for problem solving. And what that means is our best answers come when we're not distracted. So when we're not thinking, so like you're having a shower, you're washing the dishes, and while you're washing dishes, you're not checking your email and you're not watching something on your phone while you're washing the dishes. It's just that, or going for a walk. It's just that distracted time where often your brain will solve those problems. So make sure you have those quiet moments and taking control of your self-talk, which is, again, building that awareness for that moment, and visualize yourself succeeding. So we often don't visualize that I can get through this conversation, and I could see us actually having a dialogue and getting to that point. And if you could visualize it, the brain doesn't know the difference between real or imaginary. I say that again, the brain doesn't know the difference between real or imaginary. So if you visualize it, you're already priming your brain for success. Love this one. Speak to someone who is not emotionally invested in the problem. Put a mental recharge in your schedule. Go for a walk, do a little exercise, close your eyes for a couple minutes, just look out the window. Even as you're looking at the screens, if you're looking to 20 feet ahead and for 20 seconds, that's already putting a mental recharge in your schedule. And accept that change is just around the corner, that idea of optimism. Let's go to one more scenario to put our self-awareness and self-management into play. So you're getting this message. This message is for you. I'm sorry to call you like this, but I was just so shocked when I read your email about the evaluation project. I can't believe that you assigned it to Max and Nina. I feel like you've been doing this a lot to me recently, and it's not fair. All right, so remember this. This is you're being accused that that can't believe that you assigned it, and you've been doing this a lot to me recently, and it's not fair. So what are some of our possible answers? So what are you thinking right now? And I'll just say you're Claire's boss. So think carefully and practice good EI. So is it A, I feel my body tensing up, my face getting hot. I know I'm starting to get upset. I need to take a few deep breaths, regain control of my composure so I can properly understand what Claire's needs are right now. Or is it B, I understand Claire's upset, but I don't see why she keeps questioning my judgment. I need to find out what's bothering her. Or C, Claire has some nerve calling me like this. Doesn't she see I'm her boss? Claire really needs to learn to respect the decisions I make. So A, B, or C, which one would you put into play here? This is a tough one because C, obviously probably not the right answer, but A or B can be tricky. And Denise and Brown and Chris, we got some A's, mostly a couple of B's. Linda A, Chris said B, Brown O says B. Yeah, we got a couple different. Kelly A. All right, well, thank you. And they're all, A or B are good answers. The difference between A or B is that you got the but in the B. So I understand Claire's upset. That's good. But I don't see why she keeps questioning my judgment. So you already are judging her. So you're judging what she's doing. And then I need to find out what's bothering her. That's great. But you've already tainted your curiosity because you're like, I'm going to find out what's bothering her. But at the back of your mind going, but she keeps questioning my judgment. What's up with that? The other A is good because you're self-aware. You recognize what's going on, that you feel like your body's tensing up, your face is getting hot, your shoulders are getting hunched up, and you're starting to get upset. And you know that you need to start to manage your emotions right now by taking a few deep breaths to control the composure. And now you're coming from a place of genuine curiosity. I need to understand what her needs are right now. So you haven't made any judgment on her. You're taking ownership on yourself first. And again, that's what being the adult in the relationship is. So thank you, everyone. Let's go to social awareness now. So social awareness, the classic picture of the iceberg, that we only see 15% of the iceberg and 85% is underneath. So it's, what is said, but what is not said is so important. And social awareness is exactly that, is what's going on underneath. I could see what's being said, but I can't really see what's not being said. And so my job as someone who is taking this webinar now on emotional intelligence, maybe even the course, is to be a detective on what's going on with the other person. And if you've ever read The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, then I love this quote, which is one of the number one habits is seek first to understand, then to be understood. As Dr. Stephen Covey says, if I were to summarize in one sentence, the single most important principle I've learned in the field of interpersonal relationships is seek first to understand, then to be understood, which ties in with our first one, is seeking first to understand, then to be understood. So when you say she's questioning my judgment, you're like, she's not understanding my point of view. And we're already getting into a trap of that. So it's being able to just put that to the side so that let me find out what's going on here. And then I'll still bring my needs up, but let's find out what's going on with the other person because I'm the adult here and I'm going to just sort of lower their temperature. And it starts with listening. And when we listen, 75% of the time, we are distracted, we are preoccupied. And it's not just technology. We're thinking about all these things, like, why is she questioning my judgment, as an example? While Claire's talking, we're thinking in the back of our mind is that, we think about 450 words per minute. We could say about 150. So there's 300 words every minute. That's like that snow globe that you shake at the souvenir stores that's going on. So we're distracted, we're preoccupied. We're thinking of that great question we're going to ask. We're judging, we're assessing, we're thinking about dinner. We are distracted, we are preoccupied, but also be aware that the other person is also, this is happening to the other person as well. So no matter what you're saying, they're also distracted or preoccupied. And then 50% of the time, we will remember what was said. 20% of the time, we'll remember less an hour later, and even less if you didn't like the subject or the person. So let's rate let's take a look at your listening ability and give it a rating. So you don't have to answer this in the chat, but this is just for you to think about it. Do you stop listening to everything once you strongly disagree with the speaker on one point? Do you assume or anticipate regarding the other person's point of view? Do you feel that you could judge most people quite quickly before hearing them out? And then the final thing is, do you encourage others to elaborate or clarify points that you have misunderstood? So this is, again, building your awareness for these pivotal moments of, have I stopped listening because I've already disagreed with them? Have I assumed or anticipated? And if I've assumed or anticipated or stopped listening, I'm not hearing what they're saying. I'm missing the what is not said part. And if I'm judging them, the same thing. Now, if I want to make a point to encourage them to elaborate or clarify on points that maybe I've misunderstood, then I'm genuinely listening. So here's your homework from that. The next conversation that you have, rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. So after this webinar, when you're having a conversation with someone, after that conversation, walk away and go, 1 to 10, did I make them feel heard? One being not at all, 10, absolutely. 1 to 10, did I make them feel understood? 1 to 10, did I add value, or was I being competitive? And competitive means bring it back to yourself. So they're sharing something, you give a little bit of insight, you added value, or they're sharing something, you go, oh, that's so funny because I remember when that happened to me, and oh, funny story. And then it becomes about you. So our social awareness is these things. You can watch your body language, make timing everything. So is this the right time to bring up that topic with that person? Are they open to hearing at that moment? Or do we still need to lower that temperature? Have a back pocket question so that you're able to really listen and think of some questions you can ask in advance and just sort of keep them handy. You've already thought about it and it's just there. Be present, which is so important, and practice the art of listening. And then, again, that third person perspective, step into their shoes, seek the whole picture, be curious. So let's go into relationship management now, and let's talk about empathy. And empathy, we talked about, putting yourself in the other person's shoes. Empathy, I'm going to give you 3 ways that you can apply empathy. Because empathy, absolutely, you can put yourself in the other person's shoes. Empathy is you can show care. But why is it so hard in business for us to show empathy? So here's 3 ways that we can apply that. One is we could do cognitive empathy. And cognitive empathy means I don't agree with that, with the emotion that they're expressing. I can't even share. I can't even relate to what they're talking about, but I could see that it's important to them. So I see that this situation is important to you. I see that this situation has been challenging. I hear that this has been a difficult time for you. That's cognitive. So I don't share it, but I can see that's important to them. Emotional is I share that emotion. Oh, I've been there. I know how frustrating that is. I get it why you're so frustrated with this or why you're so irritated by that. Compassionate is no brain whatsoever. It purely is, if you're watching the news these days, it's like compassion. It's like, what can they do to help? It's pure compassion. And that doesn't come up often in business unless it's a really, difficult situation. But in our day-to-day, that cognitive empathy is so important to just use that to be more aware. Let's put this into practice, what I call empathy theater. Mel, are you going to be able to help me out with this?
Absolutely.
All right, great. Let's do this. So I'm going to ask everyone to give a Y for yes or N for no. Mel is going to say this line here, and I'm going to say something empathetic, and you put in the chat Y for yes or N for no. It was not. It was empathetic. It was not empathetic. Here we go. So there's your line, Mel. Delivered with an intention.
Okay, I don't think you understand what I'm saying.
I think I do. Thank you very much. So was that empathy? Was that not empathy? Oh, we're getting a lot of N's. Oh, interesting. Okay. Caroline says no. Lindsay says no. Tracy, no. All right. Well, I thought I was being empathetic. Mel, how did you feel when I said that?
I felt differently from you.
Absolutely. All right. Let me try it again, because in my mind, I thought I was being empathetic. I think I do, but my tone of voice was not there, and it's not clear what exactly what exactly it is that I'm thinking. So can you try that again and give me another chance?
Sure. So I don't think you understand what I'm saying.
You know what? You're probably right. If you don't mind maybe saying it again, and I'm going to really try hard to understand what you're saying, because I'm sorry, I probably did miss what I guess what was trying to be said. Now, better, yeah. So a lot of whys there. It's not perfect. And that's the thing about empathy, is that we feel that we have to get it perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's purely about at least the intention was there, and Mel can at least feel that and see that there's an intention to do that. So thank you so much. So this takes us here to where we look at, we're going to take your questions in just a couple minutes. So start thinking of your questions. But as we look back on everything that we accomplished here, which is the spotlight moment, what I see, what's going on with me, my values, my beliefs, why is this triggering me, my needs, my self-awareness. What do I then do with that? How do I then manage that, that 1-2 moment? Do I breathe? Do I count to 1, 2? So I don't react, but I respond, because that is going to change everything. And stop thinking about myself for a second. And hey, what's going on with the other person? The social awareness. What is going on with their world? And then the relationship management, which is now, how do I manage this relationship? I want to listen. I want to be present. I want to be empathetic. So we're going to take your questions in a second. I'm just going to share with you a little bit about what's going on at Great Canadian, and then we're going to come back to the questions. So let me just go over here quickly. So if you go over to greatcanadiantraining.ca, you'll see that we've got all of our training, our courses, and our free resources. So if you want more on the professional skills training, you would go over here to professional skills training. And of course, if you want the software training, you go over here, professional skills training. Let's go over here. And then we've got our courses. And then we go over here, we go to our professional skills, we go to our communication as an example. And so if we go to our communication, you can see some of the examples here. We talked about change management, for example, change and how to deal with it, from resistance to resilience. And here's our emotional intelligence course, The Path to Professional Success. But if you want to take it to the next level, also, you might be interested in our Conflict Begone, Navigating Difficult Conversations course as well. We've also got as we go into here, we've also got our packages as well. So if you see here, packages, and in our packages, we've got our software training packages and our leadership packages. So if you're looking to do a few courses together as part of a package, but that also involves some more support, more coaching, a bit more of a process. And for example, in our leadership packages, we've got Lead with Trust, Lead Strong Teams, Lead with Executive Presence, Lead Effective Presentations, or Lead Your Own Path. And for example, the package would Lead with Trust. As an example, it could be a new or seasoned manager, and would include some of these courses like Taking the Stress Out, being a leader, not a boss, and great leadership means feedback. And then you could add one of these following: communication or emotional intelligence, for example, to that course. And the same with our software training courses as well. You can also choose the software training package for that. So let's go back to our questions over here. As we do that, and let me there we go. And I think we've got some questions coming up. All right, so question from Anthony earlier: is there a test to score your EQ? There is. You could find that online. They're okay. Usually, if you go to like anywhere that says emotional intelligence, there is some things to do, some basic, like the one I just shared with you as well. You could find quizzes like that. But nothing is as accurate probably as you building your own self-awareness for these moments. How does emotional intelligence apply for leaders or managers? Well, I think for leaders or managers, I think that is so important because you're modeling the behavior that you want to see on your team. And your people look at you for what they call, inspiration and trust. And so, one of the reasons we see a lot of people leave their jobs was because they didn't feel respected, they didn't feel acknowledged. So that emotional intelligence is so important for leaders or emotional leaders and managers. Other question here is, which of the 4 elements should I focus on to start? Definitely the self-management. If we looked at self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship management, self-management, I think is the most important part, which is even if you can't recognize what's going on with yourself, just to be able to recognize in that spotlight moment, what do I want to do differently here? Breathe, sleep on it, seek some feedback, so that I don't have that ripple effect on that relationship. And then how to protect myself if I try too hard to show too much empathy. Is the risk for me since I'm not a psychologist? Yeah, I don't know if there's too much empathy, but I guess there's a transition always, which is empathy is there. And then there has to be a transition as well to move forward because you also have needs as well. And then that's the trap we always make, is that sometimes we're people pleasers and we try too hard to be sympathetic, and then we're neglecting our own needs. So it's important to have that balance there as well. So great questions. Thank you so much. All right. Well, thank you so much, Adele Marlos, for joining us. So much packed into 1 hour. Much appreciated. Thank you so much. As you are all leaving, thank you so much for your time and your questions and your collaboration today. And just a reminder, this is some upcoming classes. If you'll see there, September 13th, we've got our emotional intelligence, the path to professional success. As I said, if you want to take it to the next step, of course, we also got conflict be gone at September 28th. And software training with our amazing Christine Irons. You can see the courses there. If you're enjoying the webinars, come on over to greatcanadiantraining.ca for more free resources, including our podcast, which is hosted by myself, called the Great Canadian Leadership Podcast, where we talk about leadership and communication skills. We've had some great guests and some great experts on that. Upcoming webinars, if you enjoyed this one, we've got Making Your Charts a Work of Art, Give Feedback Like a Leader, Not a Critic, Power Up with Power Query. These are just some of the webinars coming up. Do come over to greatcanadiantraining.ca, free resources for more of our upcoming webinars. Thank you so much, everybody. I love all these comments. Thank you so much, Denise. Enjoyed the webinar. Executive Coach, thank you so much for the great presentation. Appreciate that. Thank you, Louise, Tracy, Linda, for these comments. I'm so glad that this was helpful to you and relevant to you. And so on you go to practice the secret to your success, to putting emotional intelligence into play. Thank you all for your participation and collaboration today. A great demonstration of emotional intelligence. And I hope that we see you in one of our sessions or one of our courses coming up soon. Thank you so much, Amy, Lindsay, Caroline. Chris, thank you. See you next month. Sarah as well. Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and shut us down. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, everyone.